All right, there is something else I wanted to talk to you fine people about today because it's a topic that's coming up a lot as we get further into the summer and the restricted free agents are still out there. So you got, and these are just examples of high profile ones. There are other ones as well. Marner, Connor, Laine, Besser, Point, Matthew Tkachuk, Rantanen, Konechny, Werenski, McAvoy, and Provorov. So the question then comes up of, well, how greedy are they? This is so greedy. This is such a greedy move on their part. But let's look at the highest priced players in the league and see how this whole greed thing works, because it's all a matter of perspective. So at the top you've got Connor McDavid, whose cap hit is $12.5 million a year. The year he signed it, that was 16.67% of the cap. That is the highest number on the board when it comes to percentages. And that's what I want to look at is percentages, because we get all caught up into who's making more than who. But it's when did you sign that contract? Where was the cap when you signed it? And what was your percentage under the cap? These players aren't just looking at money. They're looking at how am I paid in proportion to the cap. There's a reason the cap keeps going up. Panarin makes $11.6 million a year. He signs it $14.29 million when he signs it. Matthews, $11.6 million in cap. He signed that during last season. So technically when he signed it, 14.63% of the cap went to Austin Matthews. Matthews is one of the highest on the board. So Matthews did not take any kind of discount to remain with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And this is where I run into a problem. So when people say, well, this player should take a discount. They should take a discount to play. Well, wait, you want them to take term and give a discount? At 21? Their agent's going to say, don't you sign that. You're bailing them out. Erik Karlsson signs for $11.5 million. That's $14.47 million. Remember, he signs before July 1st. He signs before the new cap goes in. So technically, it's a higher percentage. These are all in the 14 percentile, right? We get to Drew Doughty, $11 million when he signed it. Tavares, $11 million when he signed it. 13.84% of the cap goes to Doughty and Tavares. So 13.84%. Matthews makes 14.63. Carey Price, $10.5 million. That's less than the others, but it's 14% of the cap when he signed it. Kane and Taves both signed for $10.5 million, the same as Price, but 15.22% of the cap went to both of them. So the longer those contracts go, the more of a benefit it is to Chicago, and the less greedy they look than they did when they first signed him. But when they first signed him, there was a lot of talk about the greed of Kane and Taves and how that was sinking Chicago's Stanley Cup hopes. Kopitar, $10 million. That was 14.01% of the cap at the time. Jack Eichel, $10 million, 13.33%. Bobrovsky, $10 million, 12.27%. So you see how this works. Bobrovsky makes the same money as Eichel and Kopitar, but technically when you look at the percentage under the cap, it's a lower cap percentage. And you better believe that general managers and your capologists are looking at this. The idea that all the players are just being greedy and owners and general managers aren't looking at all of these numbers and poring over them would be just ridiculous. Tyler Seguin, $9.85 million under the cap, 12.39% was where that was at. So yes, you could look at Seguin, and this is the first spot where you can look and say, you know, comparatively speaking, Seguin takes less money on the cap than he could have asked for. Ovechkin, $9.538 million. It looks like a huge bargain, but at the time he signed it, it was 16.8% of the cap. So, technically, his is the greediest contract on the board. Even though he's this far down, because it's been so long since he signed that contract, it makes it look like, hey, Ovechkin didn't get greedy. It's all a matter of perspective. Jamie Benn, $9.5 million. That was 13% when he signed it. Kucherov, $9.5 million, 11.95%. Same as Stone. So they are both the least greedy on the board, depending on whether you see Kucherov as being as good as McDavid, Panarin, or whoever else. But Panarin having a much higher percentage than Kucherov, that makes you think maybe Panarin was a bit overpaid. And then in the middle, you got Malkin at $9.5 million, but at the time he signed it, that was 14.77% of the cap. Now, we're going to come back to the restricted free agents. These guys are all young. If they sign an 8-year contract, all of their best years are being played under this contract. At the end of that 8-year contract, they're probably going to be worth less as 29, let's say 29, 30-year-old players than they are right now. If they sign a 4 or 5-year contract, they can cash in. They can cash in, and their percentage will still be high. They'll make more money. So you look at these long-term contracts, and a lot of these contracts aren't first contracts out of entry level. The whole thing has changed, where a guy comes out of entry level, and now it's, all right, now you're cashing in, because general managers and owners want to know exactly how much these guys are going to get paid and for how long. But the number of players that make $10 million is going to go up, because $9.5 million when Malkin signed it was 14% of the cap, and now 12% of the cap is $10 million. So when we look at these contracts and go, well, you can't get paid more than Malkin. Sure, you can. Restricted free agents this year can get paid more than Malkin, because when Malkin signed that contract, it was a much higher cap hit by percentage. So when you're looking at these guys, let's say they want 13%. Let's say they're looking on this board and going, okay, I don't want as much as Matthews. I'll go ahead and say I'm worth less than Tavares. I'm worth less than Eichel. And I'm worth right around the same as, say, Jamie Benn. That's $10.595 million under the current cap. If they want 12%, that's $9.78 million. And if they sign for 12%, it's below everybody on the board except Kucherov and Stone. And we can agree Kucherov took below market value to stay in Tampa, and Stone probably would have made $10 million plus if he'd gone to the market as well. With this current marketplace, and with Panarin making 11.6, there's no way Stone gets $9.5 million as an unrestricted free agent. He likely would have made the same as Panarin. So again, when these guys want $9.5 million a year, it looks really greedy. I get that part of it, but they're just going by the percentages. 11% of the cap. So if they want even less, if they go, okay, I don't want what any of these guys got, that's still $8.96 million a year. That's $9 million a year for these guys. And I don't know who's going to end up commanding that amount, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that Marner's worth at least 12%, which would be $9.78 million. You can argue that when you look at Matthews and you look at what Tavares make, if it's 14.63 for Matthews, 13.84 for Tavares, for him to say 13%, which would be $10.5 million, it's not outside the realm of what he should be getting. But the other part of Matthews' contract that's curious is it's only a 5-year deal. So now if you're Kyle Dubas coming over to Marner, you're now telling him, hey, so we're going to pay you less of a percentage, and we want you to stick around longer. We gave him 5 years, so he has an out. We don't want to give you that out. We want you to be here 8 years. So we're going to start you at 12% with $9.78 million, and at the end of that contract, you're going to be around 9% of the cap, maybe 8, considering the new American TV contract that's going to get signed in a year or two here. So we're going to go ahead and give you what looks like a lot of money right now. And to the rest of us, it is a lot of money. But the other thing that doesn't get factored in here is injury. So now you're a kid, 21, 22 years of age. You're looking at whether or not you want to spend 4 or 5 or 8 years with a team. Maybe 7. Maybe you can talk them down to 7. And then you got to factor in this day and age of concussions and of injury being an issue with just how fast and how big the players are, what if you sign for below market value and then there's an injury and your career's done? Or, what if there's a lot of what ifs to this? What if you sign an 8-year contract and then a year from now one of these teams is in another rebuild and you're miserable? What about going back to Marner? I use Marner as an example, not for Leaf reasons, but because you've got Matthews here on the board too. What if the Leafs absolutely crap out and Matthews bolts in 5 years? He's like, all right, I'm going to go sign in Arizona. You're now stuck for 3 extra years with this. Rather than in 5 years' time, if you sign for the same length of time as Matthews, you could potentially be gone too. Now for Toronto, that's a nightmare scenario. You don't want to deal with that. But they already gave Matthews the 5-year contract. So while Tavares is there for the extended long haul because he's a veteran player and that's where he wanted to play, for these young kids, they don't necessarily at 21 years of age say, oh yeah, I can spend the rest of my life here. Rest of my career, I'm a Maple Leaf. Rest of my career, I'm a member of the Avalanche. Rest of my career, I'm a Canuck. I can totally understand Brock Besser looking at Vancouver right now and going, I'll give you guys 4 or 5 years. Because there's no telling whether the Canucks will be any good 4 or 5 years from now, how this rebuild's going to work out. I don't have any problem with a shorter term contract. And I honestly think that what happened with the Matthews contract was it shifted everything. And I think that's part of the reason why the market is stalled. Because you have teams that still want this certainty so that, 5-6 years from now, the contracts they're signing look like huge bargains. And you have players going, hey, 5 years from now, it would be nice to be an unrestricted or even a restricted free agent again where I can demand $12, $13 million. It could be a huge difference. So let's say you get 5 years, $11 million. That's $55 million. We can all live on that. All right. Let's say you get 8 years at $11 million. That's $88 million. We can all live on that. At the end of that 5 years, you can sign another contract. Let's just say for 3, just to make it equal. But let's say you get some ridiculous $14 million a year contract. You have now made about $9 million more in those 3 years than you would if you signed an $8 million a year or 8-year contract. And that's just saying that their value would go up $3 million a year in 5 years. Look at this. That can easily happen, especially with a brand new American TV deal and with a brand new CBA. And you could easily do this. So these guys aren't just sitting out going, that's it, I'm just going to sit out and I don't care and I'm just being greedy. This is I'm looking at my future. I'm looking at whether I want to be in control in 5 years or in control in 8. When I'm 29, and odds are I'm not going to be worth as much as a 29-year-old unrestricted free agent as I will at 26 as a restricted free agent. Or potentially an unrestricted free agent. Depending on how many years they've got, how much service and all this, they may very well be unrestricted in 5, they may be restricted. But either way, they can still command more money later. It's fine to say, well, they should be team players. I would agree with you if I had seen that same loyalty from owners to players, and I haven't. I don't see loyalty from owners to players or from general managers to players. How many crappy contracts did we see get signed 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago that end up getting bought out? The player gets traded. And as soon as the players, oh, you're gone, this didn't work out, and the player's upset or he goes, I have a no trade clause, I don't want to get traded, then we as fans are conditioned to go, what a greedy son of... He won't allow us to trade him? Yeah, it'd be a shame if the contract he signed, he expected it to be honored. It's billionaires against millionaires. And these players right here, there's a lot on the line. It's a lot of money. A ton of money. Because right now McDavid is the watermark at $12.5 million. But in reality, this number of 16.67% is what players are going to be looking at. Not the $12.5 million. It's what percentage of the cap should I make? Because here's where I'll leave it. So for people who say, well, that's not right, you shouldn't get paid more than that guy. So the league keeps making more and more and more money. That's how the cap keeps going up. The players are entitled to a certain amount of that money as per the collective bargaining agreement. And it doesn't say anything about not being higher than McDavid in wages anywhere in the CBA. McDavid will regret that contract is my guess. In its term. Because eventually he won't be here. Eventually he'll be down and around Malkin territory. I'm not saying Malkin regrets that at all because Malkin seems to love it in Pittsburgh. But if the Oilers continue to spin their wheels and he's not happy in Edmonton, he may very well regret that contract. Because there's nothing that makes Edmonton trade him. The amount of control that players can get if they sign a 4 or 5 year contract rather than 8 is huge. And it's a league that has shown no loyalty to the players. Whether it's buyouts, whether it's trades to teams they don't really want to play for, whether it's, they get hurt, they end up on the LTIR, and maybe they end up on the LTIR because the team wore them out. Team knew they were hurting, but hey, we gotta make the playoffs. We gotta keep our revenues up. The league is making a lot of money. We get caught up when we see a list like this and say the players are being greedy. I think they're just playing good business. And the first one that cracks is going to decide how much we're going to see the percentages looked at, or whether or not these guys just all take less. But I don't see why they should have to take less, or why the percentages don't matter now. Or you can say, well, you can't make more than Malkin or Kucherov. Yeah, you can. Malkin's was not a bargain when he signed it, and Kucherov's was a bargain when he signed it. So you can. But it's going to be interesting to see who makes what. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. The big question is this. Of the names on the board, and Konechny to me would be the obvious one that should make less than the other guys. But who's gonna crack first of the big names at the top of the board? How much are they gonna get? And how justifiable is it? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing right through, you just happened upon this video. And as much fun as it isn't, the reality is these players are out there to make their money. The owners are out there to make their money. And we end up paying for it in increased ticket prices, increased prices for things like jerseys, and all that other wonderful stuff. Remember, when I graduated high school, jerseys were $50. Now they're $200. So that's 4 times the amount. That's just insane. But that's how sports works. Let me know what you guys think as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching. I will talk to you again soon.